I've just made a video about Ben Habib, and somebody has directed me to a video that I should see, which I've just looked at, by DZM Liam Tufts. And it's a very interesting interview. And I think it sums up a lot of the things which I was talking about. So I'd like to go through it if that's okay. The interview is a masterclass in how political theatre can be dressed up as principle while being riddled with errors, false premises, and dangerous rhetoric. And I think this is why Ben Habib is wrong, wrong, wrong. First of all, he talks about the burqa as a rejection of British culture. Well, I remember when I was little, my mother and most of my mother's friends always used to wear headscarves. The Queen used to wear a headscarf. Habib asserts that when a woman wears a burqa in the UK, she is signalling her repression and rejecting British culture. This is simplistic and it ignores several key points. In a free society, clothing is an expression of personal choice, and meaning is not uniform. For some women, the burqa is a sign of imposed oppression. For others, it's a personal religious commitment or cultural expression, like donning the habit of a nun. And his position conflates symbolic interpretation with intention, assuming every wearer shares his reading of the garment. That's intellectually lazy. If Britain claims to champion freedom of expression and belief, banning or pathologizing clothing undermines that very British value. Paradoxically, Ben Habib's argument mimics the authoritarianism he claims to oppose. I would make the same argument to the French government. He says 1.5 million foreigners are on benefits. He presents this as proof of the routine abuse of the welfare state by migrants without credible sourcing or breakdown. The figure almost certainly includes long-term residents who have worked and contributed before needing support, refugees legally entitled to benefits under UK and international law, and by lumping them into a single negative category, he erases legal distinctions and appeals to resentment rather than evidence-based policy. His idea that borders that work need to be physically enforced, and his comparison to Polish soldiers potentially shooting border crossers, is alarmist and legally dubious. UK border enforcement is already bound by international treaties of non-refoulement, and which prohibit sending asylum seekers back to danger without proper assessment. And his framing assumes all channel crossers are illegal, ignoring that many later win asylum claims, meaning that they had a lawful right to protection in the first place. The shoot at the border mentality ignores the UK's humanitarian obligations and would invite legal and diplomatic disaster. Then his claim that British judges are in support groups for illegal migrants is inflammatory without verifiable specifics. Judges apply the law as written by Parliament. If they rule against deportation, it's because the legal framework, often and generally the UK's own legislation, permits it. This is a political problem. It's not a problem of judicial misconduct. And he habitually implies dark motives. Farage must have made certain deals. Donors must have been paying for services rendered, and supranational bodies must be orchestrating Britain's decline. Must have is not evidence. It's conjecture disguised as conclusion. And by framing speculation as near certainty, Ben Habib primes his audience to distrust without having to prove anything. He wants to reject the label of right-wing by claiming his positions are simply common sense. This is a rhetorical trick. It rebrands an ideological position as a neutral truth. It's not neutral. But his platform is ideologically right-aligned. His idea of restrictive immigration caps, his heavy emphasis on cultural assimilation, his hostility to supranational legal frameworks, reframing these as non-ideological is disingenuous. And he praises the British Empire as an unequivocal good and ties his childhood in Pakistan to the tailwinds of British Imperial India. This glosses over the complex legacy of empire, including economic extraction, political repression, and the very partition violence that he admits destabilised Pakistan. By casting the UK as facing existential threat from immigration and supranational influence, he normalizes extreme political remedies. And that kind of framing has historically been used to justify the erosion of civil liberties in the name of national survival. It must be wrong. This is a logic of dangerous escalation. And his rhetoric goes on to, he assumes that national cohesion depends on near total cultural uniformity and demographic stasis. It's a vision that's neither historically accurate nor democratically mandated in Britain, in modern Britain, or indeed in historical Britain. The UK has absorbed and integrated cultural diversity for centuries, from the Huguenots to Caribbean migrants, from the Romans to the Normans. His framing risks turning integration policy into enforced cultural purity. Habib's "we need lions, not foxes" language sells politics as a personality contest rather than a policy platform. I entirely agree that personality matters in politics, but at least pay lip service to the to the idea that policy matters as well. He personalizes political disagreement into character assassination. Farage is cunning, Farage is cowardly, while claiming high moral ground. Tommy Robinson, I was listening to his trigonometry interview yesterday. It is fascinating, and I'll get to that later on today when I can analyze it more thoroughly. But it's there's many of the same tropes. It shouldn't surprise us because they're both supporting Advance UK. But and why would I worry that you've got two people gunning for Farage? Farage is not my friend, but and I think Farage is also deeply wrong. But this idea that it's all about one person who is hell bent on lying to get power, well, that's also true. But it doesn't mean that that doesn't whitewash Ben Habib, and it doesn't particularly whitewash Tommy Robinson. Though Tommy Robinson, I think, is the more naive of the two, and the more easily led. This deepens. This language of Ben Habib is designed to deepen factionalism rather than to present workable cross-party solutions, and that, I think, is extremely dangerous. If you strip away the applause lines, what remains is unsubstantiated claims presented as facts, a narrow exclusionary definition of Britishness, and a belief that social cohesion is achieved through cultural suppression, not mutual respect. It's a willingness to frame politics as an existential battle to justify extreme measures. In short, Habib's argument is less a defence of British values than a selective rewriting of them, turning liberty into uniformity and turning suspicion into policy. And this is why he is wrong, wrong, wrong.